Hey, this is Vu, and today I'm going to do a pro demo breakdown, the full demo of Astralis versus Liquid from the quarterfinals of the StarLadder Berlin 2019 Major. This is probably one of the best games of CS that anyone is going to have the pleasure of watching, and I thought it was definitely worth breaking down in more depth. And if you want to see more of this type of thing, or if you just want to support the channel, you can follow me and support me on Patreon. I have a Patreon with the link down in the description, and one of the tiers gives you access to a playlist of pro demo breakdowns like this. So getting into it here, we'll start from the very beginning here. This is a match I've already seen live as a spectator because I love watching CS, but we can break this one down as well. And there's plenty of interesting things that happen on both sides, but I think the most interesting bits are actually Astralis's executes and their Teesside were absolutely fantastic. So going into this here, both teams are playing a fairly controlled pistol round. You're going to notice actually that Astralis doesn't get a kit, which is sometimes a little bit odd because if you get a bomb plant towards the A side of the map and your team doesn't have a kit on the CT side, it feels almost impossible to actually win it. But they go for the flashes to get aggressive towards B, and you can see that Team Liquid, either by counter-stratting or simply by going for a very control-oriented pistol round, which is fairly rare, Stewie's going to hear Magisk push up, he's going to call his teammate over, and they're going to try and chase him down. And I absolutely love this, that Stewie doesn't try and take the engagement, but Nitro peeks out to support, Nitro gets the dink, and Stewie's pushing up off the back of that to get the free kill for themselves. And the way Astralis reacts to this is actually probably the most impressive part, because the way Astralis plays out the rest of the round is fantastic. So they rotate a player over, so now they've got 3B trying to hold in case Liquid quickly go over to B, but Liquid doesn't want to get caught off guard here. They're playing it fairly safe, fairly slow, and they're not trying to give anything up, not giving away any information. And Astralis is going to start rotating back over to A. Then on the A side, what's hard to really recognize here is as these two players begin to rotate over to A, the A players begin to look for some information. So if they find information and Liquid starts quickly executing towards the A side, those players will already be partially rotated almost halfway there. However, if they don't find information, which they don't, both Device and Dupree make their way back over to B, and they move 4 players partially rotated over to B now as the execute comes out. So they do a partial rotate and hit right on back, and this ends up having 4 players over on B as the Liquid execute over to B works out. So even though it's a 4v5, they're actually in a pretty good spot to try and deal with this. But they do end up getting put into the 2v2 or 2v3 here. Pretty tough spot. There's not all that much they can do except take the gunfights, and Twist is just going to win them there. So I love the way that Astralis played that. They really had a very clear idea of what was going on, because obviously on the T side, a lot of the time what they're doing is they're trying to 5-man stack, you know, maybe a 3-2 split towards A or something like that, where if you find the information, you want to have players there as quickly as possible, and that's exactly what Astralis played against there. Now, this round, Astralis is going to go for the force buy. You'll notice Device keeps $1,000 in the bank. That's so he can afford an op. Reasonably, if he gets a kill here, he'll be able to afford an op and body armor into round number 4 very easily. So that's why you want to stay at least with a little bit of money in the bank. He doesn't spend everything, while the players that are looking to rifle are spending just about everything. And they're trying to give some space to the scouts here. They've got the one towards B and the one towards A. There's a little bit of stacking going on here. However, oftentimes, you know, bathrooms is the place where if they're not rushing B, they're probably going to slowly take towards bathrooms, make sure there's nothing there. And if you have a bit of a stack there, you can get something done. Device with the scout in hand, holding towards top connector. There is, of course, plenty of risk in this because a player could theoretically come through above connector and walk out like this, although that's a little bit of an odd play. Someone can even walk up to the bench and peek out. That's a little bit of an odd play, and I like that Device is not worried too much about it. He trusts that he can probably hit the flick, but more likely he's just hoping that they actually go to the spot that he's posted on and not the other spot. He also recognizes to re-peek this. He goes re-aggressive even after the flash comes out because he recognizes he might find a timing, looks for the frag, and finds a shot. And especially when you're down 4v5, especially with pistols on several of your players, going re-aggressive like that to find a shot off is fantastic, and you're not always going to be punished by it, especially if you have a player in bathrooms that's kind of creating space for you as well, right? So this one works out for them a little bit. They do quite a bit of damage to Team Liquid, even though they don't find any frags, but Liquid will end up going back over to B, and this is about the time when you would think they might start to look for a bit of information, but they're worried that Liquid is going to be like holding the angles there, so they're not going to do anything like that. And the one very interesting thing that I love to see here from Xyp9x, I even want to replay this one for you, because the way he plays this is so perfect, and it's one of those small things that I guess a CS nerd can be interested in, right? So they're going to come out towards B. He's going to hit the first shot off here, and he recognizes that the most common line for someone to go to try and deal with this player barrels is to hug this back wall, because if you're hugging the back wall here, it means you're less exposed to the player towards Sandbags that might be there, or a player in all these other weird spots, and you can try and get that frag on him without putting yourself in the middle of the open on the close to barrel side. You also get closer to him a little bit faster. So what he does is he hits the shot, and he immediately tosses a nade along the back wall, and that grabs him a kill there, and he even finds a shot on a NAF as well, which is just individual skill, right? That's fantastic. After that, now they're in the 3v4, and likely the original kind of idea here is to try and find frags. They're leaving Device in heaven to try and lock down some long-range angles with the scout in hand, get some shots off, and as soon as they get the first kill, though, this is when they're really starting to go for it, and that's why you see Dupree at the back there. Part of it is that a lot of the time when you're on ecos, you're trying to, on an anti-eco, you're trying to hold the flank for a long time, so Astralis is putting pressure on the front before they come through on the flank, hoping to catch someone off guard, and they kind of catch Nitro off guard. Put it into a 2v2. Now Device is getting aggressive, and Dupree with the Mac 10 in hand is going to be able to find a couple kills. So, good team play there. Partially it was them trying to get guns down rather than actually try to win the round to begin with. But also the delay on the flank there ensures that a lot of the time, in fact, Dupree will be able to catch someone off guard. If someone's on the other side of the smoke that he was holding there, and they're waiting for flanks, and they start to get pressured in the bomb site, that's when you start to back up from holding that flank, and he can catch them in the back as they're rotating back. So it's definitely a play that made a lot of sense in a lot of different ways, and the entire play works out perfectly. It gets 5 kills on a Liquid. It doesn't win them the round, which is really expected, but getting 5 kills, just damaging the economy, you can see the money for Liquid is not very good right now, right? So now they're going to go for the boost. Device is actually going to be able to find a kill off of it. Liquid is playing very aggressive for a team that is expecting a pistol buy-up here. This is actually much more aggressive than you would expect, and it almost works out for them. If Device hadn't found that kill with the P250 from the boost, they would be in a pretty good spot in this round right now. They probably would already have full bomb site control, but still, all Astralis really wants to do here is pick up 3 kills. If you can pick up 3 kills, you're going to damage the economy of your opponents. You're going to put yourself in a pretty good spot, and they do exactly that. The first one off of Device, the second one in the hold of the bomb site, and the third one obviously here from Glaive rotating into heaven. So they do more than their job there, and then again, the whole goal of their situation right now is to make sure that into this first gun round, Team Liquid isn't comfortable. A lot of the time when you have a 4th round buy-up, your opponents on Teesside specifically are pretty comfortable with their economy situation, and you don't want to have that. You can see they're bought up to 0 here. Even Nitro doesn't have a full buy-up, which is exactly what Astralis wants. They want everything banking on this round where they can win it and put Liquid onto an eco and start to run things back, right? So here Astralis, Device trying to get a little bit aggressive there, try and find an entry, but it's actually towards the B side that they take down NAF with the double aggress towards Monster. And I love this play, the theory behind this play, because the majority of teams are generally running some sort of 1-4 setup. This is like pretty common nowadays, is the 1-4. A lot of the time you're running 2 towards playground, 2 connector, 1B, or you're running, 3 or 4 towards playground, 3 or 4 towards connector. Whatever the split is, it usually ends up with only one player holding towards Monster. And if you go for a double rifle push and you know your opponents are likely rifling, which Astralis does know here, for the record, they should know that Liquid is almost certainly 5 rifling because of the 5 kill second round and the 3 kill third round. It's very unlikely that Liquid is actually able to afford an op here. So going for the double rifle push out, even if you get the trade, which is traditionally benefit to the T's in a 4v4, the amount of map control you pressure your opponents off of is absolutely crazy, and I think it's even worth the trade in that situation. So I love this type of aggression to try and deal with the player towards monster. It's not super unique, but I just want to highlight that it makes a ton of sense when you're playing in a team environment. So here, Device is going to get smoked off. His main thing that he wanted to do there, you're going to notice he pushed through, and he wanted to find the kill, obviously, but one of the main things he wants to do there is at least take a shot and put a little bit of pressure. And by putting that pressure, he's trying to draw Elige and Nitro to peek out and try and shoot at him so that Dupree can be a little bit relieved of a bit of pressure, right? So they're not as likely to check him, and Dupree can potentially catch them trying to swing on Device. Unfortunately, Device ends up getting killed through the smoke, and the trade is going to come out. So Liquid ends up in the 3v3 here, even though they went down 4v5 to begin with, just by a little bit of luck killing Device through the smoke there. Of course, Device, if he falls back in a straight line, it's kind of tough. You know, you're going to die through the smoke. It is a little bit of an uncomfortable spot, but it's also a little bit of luck, right? And now Liquid is going to go a little bit quiet. The trouble with going quiet in this situation is Astralis got so much control early. This is exactly why that push was so effective. Astralis got so much control early that Liquid, even by going passive, they don't really have much option to go back to B. They would have to clear out a shit ton of different angles, and very likely there's someone that catches them off guard in some way. Could even be flanking through T-spawn, although that's, you know, somewhat unlikely. So they're almost pigeonholed into heading towards the A side here, even though they would love to go silent and make it, you know, at least a little bit of pressure on Astralis to worry about the B side. Unfortunately for them, Glaive is on the correct area of the map. Then he's going to go for the flank, try and catch them off guard with the flank. And as they make their way in, it's actually Magis that doesn't find the entry. Just clearing angles, they find the kill. And the kill onto Glaive as well. So that's just a little bit of aim duels where Glaive and Magisk both lose the aim duel that they really need to be picking up there, at least one of them, to give the team a chance, and leave Zipnix into the 1v3. He already found one. Really here, he's mostly trying to save. There's a very vague opportunity for him to win this one, but he's mostly considering a save, likely before he even gets to this point. He's looking for someone to potentially give himself up, but almost it's him getting a kill there would almost be like a poison fruit or something, a poison apple, however you want to call it, poison chalice, whatever you want to call it, right? Where if he finds a kill, he actually will go for the round win, but he's definitely dying, like almost definitely dying if he does go for that round win. But he would at least do a little bit of extra economic damage to Liquid, which is really pivotal in your ability to actually win these games, is to continually do economic damage to the T side, even if you're losing rounds. Because with the economy the way it's working, your main goal in these round losses should just be to do economic damage and prevent Liquid from being in a situation where they could lose a round and still be able to buy up. So you can see the way Astralis is buying now is really trying to execute on that as much as possible, where they're buying as much as possible, as you know, as much as they can, and trying to do economic damage wherever and whenever they can. And if they do that economic damage, they can keep Liquid in this situation, and when they do eventually win a round, they can start to build an economy for themselves. So doubling up in connector here with a little bit of support from Device, with the scout holding from above. Unfortunately, doesn't work out super well for them at the beginning of that one, as Device isn't able to stop them from going in towards the top of connector, and he's forced to fall all the way back. However, Glaive, the smoke criminal version 2, it's just individual skill there. That's just individual skill. One thing is, Liquid is a little bit stacked up. This is the type of thing that you don't necessarily want to see, where the way Glaive got the second and, or the third and fourth kill rather, or the first and second in the spray down, is partially to do with the lining up or the spacing of Liquid. If you're going to see here, just trying to fast forward through to show this again. He gets the first kill, a little bit spread out there, gets the second, but you can see Elige and Twist are really just butt-fucking each other here. They're not expecting Glaive necessarily to be as aggressive as he is back up the stairs, but your general goal when you're trying to have good spacing in a situation like that is to make sure that you can find the first kill and the second player can quickly trade, but you don't want to allow the player to do what Glaive did there and just hold down mouse 1 and get shots off on both players. The spacing wasn't it was almost right. If there was a little tiny bit more space, he would have had to let go of trigger. Then you peek out while he's still in his recoil cooldown. That's what you really want. You don't want to allow that spray down to come out. But really, that's more heroics from Glaive than anything else. And even the player with 10 HP got instantly headshotted. So it's just how it goes. So Glaive puts them back into it, and because they've continually done economic damage to Liquid throughout the half, right? Liquid is now onto a situation where they're kind of have to force buy up here with a Krieg, a Galil, and an Ump, and 2 pistols. They're forced to do it, and Astralis know that the economy or the utility is going to be a little bit low. They're trying to deal with that. They're trying to get aggressive, and part of getting aggressive towards short here, they just don't want to give anything up for free. So they're putting a lot of pressure on short. They want to make sure that Liquid is forced to use as much utility as possible in their quest to get short B control. And it's going to work out very well for them a little bit later on in the half. It's going to force out the utility from Liquid, again, a little bit later on in the half. But for this round, works out well for them as well. They find the entry. Magisk almost goes down there, which would have been pretty disastrous going that aggressively against pistols. But I'm a little bit split on the idea of going heavily aggressive against pistols. Partially, it does open yourselves up for a potential, pistol or eco loss, right? However, it also puts a little bit more fury in your opponents once they get guns in their hand. And now Liquid, with low utility, is forced to just execute out, and this is just gunfights here at this point. Magisk gets trapped in sight, and that's where things get a little bit dicey. Because he gets trapped in sight there, he's not able to do anything. It's a little bit spread out from them early on there. It's a little bit spread out. However, everything ends up working out fairly well for them. And Stewie, you're going to notice him here. He doesn't actually scope in. The reason you're going to notice him not scoping in is because he wants to be able to flick around and potentially check his flank, shoot someone, well, Glaive, that he knows is flanking quickly without having to quick switch out of his scope. I think this is the main reason he's unscoped here, so he has more ability to avoid a flash coming over, which is what he'll do exactly right here. Avoid the flash, turn around, miss the flick, and now Naf in the 1v2. Pretty tough spot here. They know exactly where he is. He's got no utility. He's got no armor. He just needs to land a ridiculous shot. And unfortunately, if he had found the shot on a Glaive, there's a decent chance he would have been able to at least delay for quite a bit longer. But because he missed a shot on Glaive, he wasn't able to instantly jump up on the truck to avoid the second player. He's forced to stand a little bit still and gets killed. So now Liquid is onto the pistols, and their goal here should be to do the same economic damage to Astralis that Astralis was doing to them on pistols. But it's a little bit harder to continually do economic damage on the pass specifically, because oftentimes the pistols can be shut down and forced into long-range engagements, and you need to land some really nice shots. So they try to go fast up connector, catch someone off guard there, not really able to do it. And you can see the setup here from Astralis. This is pretty standard. It's a little bit aggressive against pistols, but you play a guy close in bathrooms to hold off this doorway here, right? And then you play the Opper. The Opper has full ability to aim down on this great long-range angle because the Rifler is covering his close-range angle. However, if you remember the last round, the reason that went poorly is because Magisk was basically hiding in this corner, I believe, got checked and killed because Device didn't have the timing to hold this angle on gravel or lane or whatever you want to call it. He didn't really have the timing. He got caught off guard there. Then Magisk goes down, or it wasn't Magisk. I believe Magisk was the Opper in the previous round, but his teammate goes down and the Opper in the site is then trapped. He can get trapped in from multiple different angles, but with a third player there, that danger is kind of mitigated because even if the first player goes down, the player towards truck can still prevent the kind of wrap on the bomb site and make things work out pretty well for them. So here, Astralis has had pretty good success with aggression towards short B and aggression towards connector, and they're continually trying to put pressure on the players as they try and get this short B control. They realize that Liquid wants to go for short B control fairly often. Liquid seems to be rotating between a couple of different setups. Oftentimes they go for a 4-1 or they go for the short B control. And with the short B control, if they can continually put pressure through doorway and through short B, they're going to have a pretty good time in basically nullifying anything Liquid wants to do. Then Dupree just retarded, ridiculous 3 bullets for 2 kills. Stewie getting aggressive to try and get the trade doesn't work out for them. And here in a 2v5, the main goal, of course, as much as you would love to win, the main goal is to try and win or try and get some kills, right? So they're boosting up. They're just looking for frags. Best case scenario, really, here, they could take down the op out of Device's hands, but Device backs up a little bit, recognizing that situation, and actually rotates around, tries to be a little bit safe, and they don't want to give anything up if they at all can. And Astralis has done a much better job of closing these rounds that they're winning out with 5 players, or at least multiple players alive, than Liquid has been doing. Liquid got picked apart, really, by Astralis. And you can see how, oftentimes I feel like you can see how a game's going to continue to go just by the way they're winning these rounds. Astralis seems to have a much better grasp and really out-aiming Liquid right now, which is not at all what you would expect. And now Liquid with pistols, they will find the entry, but just the confidence out of Astralis right now, you can see Device against Eco again. He's putting so much pressure. The thing is, again, this makes it a little bit more dangerous in a lot of situations, a little bit somewhat more likely that you could throw away the round with rifles against the pistols. However, once Liquid is back onto rifles, they're going to be a lot more paranoid about these pushes because they've been happening while Liquid has pistols, and I think it sets yourself up, or it sets Astralis up for a much stronger entire half as compared to the specific round they're in, which I think might be a little bit weakened by the solo aggressions, but it seems like that's how the meta has shifted as of recent at the very least. Now Device on the flank, somehow he makes noise and Twist doesn't hear him. It's just like perfect timing here, really. If he's a second later, if he's a second later, he probably dies to Nitro. He might even get heard by Twist. Just unfortunate there for him. But now Nitro, again, going to try and get some economic damage done. Once you get into the 1v3, it is somehow winnable, but it's still not really very winnable. And you can see Glaive, perfect off angle here. Magisk, great off angle as well. It makes it very hard for Nitro to find anything. And he has to expose himself at some point where the rotate can start coming in. And Nitro's just not able to land the shot there. So Astralis take the lead now, 5-4. And Liquid are back on the guns, but look at the economy of Astralis, right? They have ridiculous amounts of money to work with. They have such a good situation, and Liquid hasn't found anything that's worked even a little bit. Like, nothing has even shown shades of working. Sometimes you can be in a situation where you lose a few rounds in a row, but you still have some semblance of control. But in this situation, Liquid is just kind of trying to throw shit against the wall and see what works. And the play out monster, it looks like it works, but Elish taken down to 9 HP. That's really not what you want in this type of situation. With that play, they're really sticking themselves all the way towards monster, and they're really hoping they can find the first entry, the initial opening, and then they can force their way out. As soon as they lose the initial opening, they're in a bit of a tough spot, and if they lose the initial opening and the second player is taken down low, they immediately have to abandon ship. And what you saw Astralis here was doing was they had Device actually holding this angle here, recognizing that the most likely way that Liquid makes their way back from a B heavy, monster heavy play is to make their way up connector, because it's a little bit weird to be making your way all the way back around through playground. And I think Astralis, or Device rather, might have actually recognized that they weren't going through playground early on in the round. He knows they're going to have to come up connector, so he takes the one shot and then he falls right on back and gets the information for the rotate. So his team was able to stack over to the B side for as long as possible before the rotate came through. Then Dupree finds the kill off the off angle there and gets himself into a pretty good spot here behind the truck. He can actually kind of one-way the smoke, and he's going to get flashed through for a perfect flash, but Naf was actually turned from it, I believe, looking back towards long. Flash pops, turns around, finds the frag, and all of a sudden Astralis now in the 1v3. Glaive again trying to get something done. You have to go for it in that 1v3 because you have so much money. You have to try and do it, but in that situation it's pretty unlikely he's going to win it. So Liquid do tie things right on back up, and they haven't been punished for it. So Astralis is continuing to go aggressive towards party and towards middle because there's nothing that Liquid has really been doing to punish that play. It's hard to punish that play, but you need 2 or 3 players there and doing a fairly specific and aggressive play to try and deal with it. And if they're not punishing it, then there's not much reason not to do it. On the other side of the map, you can see that there's there's very obviously a read here from Astralis. They've got some sort of counter strat, and this is one of the things that people don't often notice. I feel like there's no way they don't have some sort of counter strat or read on Liquid here, whether it be that they think Liquid does these types of plays in these types of situations. But you can see that Liquid is going heavily towards A again. They have one player B again, and I believe this is only the second time that Astralis has done this monster push, and surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, it's the second time Liquid has done the 4A setup. So obviously there must be something that they're reading into here that's making them do this aggressive play. This time around, it just doesn't work out. But I think the idea behind the play I mentioned earlier, fantastic. However, it's a little bit hard to sometimes read when that play is going to be the correct idea. And I guess Astralis just has a good read of when that play is going to be the correct idea. They even have that deep smoke to push off someone with an AWP. It's such a smart play. I absolutely love it. And whatever their read is, works perfectly. But now they're actually like correctly stacking doubled up here towards B and going for the information. So you can see that even Dupree is a little bit passive here on A because they've seen Liquid has been kind of shut down on the A side pretty often recently. Liquid also hasn't really gone for very much bathrooms control yet. And I think Astralis has a decent idea of the way Liquid takes bathrooms control, which hasn't been replicated so far in this round. So they're a little bit more feeling like the B hit will come out. That's why they're doubled up here in such a great spot. If Device was to find the initial entry here, it would almost feel, even in the 3v5, that this round was almost over because they would be drawn to look on that side, and if they were trying to push out, Magisk would be able to shut them down immediately. And even in this, even without Device finding the kill, Magisk is still able to find the first. He's just not able to find the second. And again, if Device had found the first, that would have been absolutely fantastic for them. And now when they're in the 2v3, and Liquid goes silent. They go silent. They're holding angles here. They're trying to make sure that Astralis is forced to rotate back over. And this time around, because they're on the B side and Astralis hasn't gotten overly aggressive towards A, they do have to worry specifically about the A play. So they rotate one off, and it's just going to be Device to try and hold on. And he wants to get information here. If Liquid had held for a couple more seconds, I think he would have probably got a little bit aggressive there and might have been taken down in that situation. Instead, they go out just a few seconds potentially before Device goes for that information. And doesn't really matter too much as they still will be able to get the bomb plant, but into the 1v2, there's definitely winning chances. And I love this play from Device here because he can be calling to Dupree exactly where the Bombsite player went. He has to have gone back onto the ramp. However, Nitro lands the shot regardless, and now Device is just going to try and hold on to his gun because holding on to the AWP in this situation, especially because your money's a little bit lower, is obviously the superior play. Instead of, if he had a rifle and their money was a bit higher, he'd probably be looking to try and go for it, or at least try and get some frags. But now they're in the spot where, win or lose, either team will end up having to save. So you can clearly see that this is a pretty pivotal round, and Astralis is trying to get a little bit aggressive towards short B. They've gone connector a lot. They've made Liquid very paranoid about connector, and now they're trying to aggress towards short B. And this time around, Magisk is going to get the hold on towards the ramp there. He's going to get a couple kills, but Stewie and Naf trade back, just landing the shots here. But the quick rotate came out, and this is part of what is so strong about them playing this far pushed up middle op play with Device early on in the round, is that in doing so, they're allowing this quick rotate down connector when the fast B play comes out. Excuse me, so Device is already here, right? So they've got two players towards short B and Dupree on the hold, and this is just a ridiculous play from Dupree, actually trying to push through the molly. He's thinking probably to himself that in this situation, he's mollied off. He's thinking that Liquid could be, he might be thinking they could be boosting Heaven, but he's more likely thinking that they're trying to plant safe from short, and they're going to try and plant, beside Sandbags right here next to above where Nitro is. You might be thinking they're going to try and plant safe there. They're going to be trying to smoke off short B, and they're probably not thinking about the angle that they mollied off. That's likely why he made that play. However, they were actually pushing up on him, and it's just absolute heroics that he's able to find a kill there. Like, in no reasonable situation should he be able to find that kill. Here, Zipnix doesn't see Nitro, and I'm certain some people are going to call that 4x3, but I think that's more likely Yeah, I think it might be more likely to be that it shows on Zipnik's screen there that he should have seen him, but there's a little bit of delay between the spectator camera and the in-game camera. It's possible that Zipnik's just wasn't in, like, he was never on Zipnik's screen. I think that's somewhat more likely. But in any case, now in the 2v2, and I absolutely adore this play from Liquid. I watched this live. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. So what do they do here? They know that both players from Astralis were towards short B when they initially went over to B. They know that because of the way the round played out. It's pretty obvious at this point. So when they went back and got the bomb plant and they realized that Astralis had rotated both players off, what's the most likely situation? Well, the most likely situation is that one of them comes back towards short B, and by double walking towards short themselves, they're going to be able to get the flank off and find one or both kills. They find one, and the other thing about this is by doubling up, they ensure that if they do get smoked off, they can boost up onto the sandbags potentially and prevent the bomb from being defused. So there's so many things that are great about that play, but it's just such an intelligent play to double walk back towards short, make sure both your players are there. Very likely you get a flank kill, especially with the timing. I mean, Zipnik's was there, I believe it was Zipnik's, was there pretty quick towards Sandbags, probably quicker than they might have expected to get that smoke off at the timing he did, but they were still able to kill him for free. He was still trying to work his way in because he had no idea where Liquid was. So great situation there from Liquid. Now they're up 7-5, and Astralis is playing from the back foot a little bit here. They've got Device with the AK that has a little bit of trouble making his way up onto the boost. And this molly is actually pretty standard nowadays, so it's not anything special. It seems pretty standard. Not to deal with the boost as much as it is to deal with just the corner that the player boosting up, the player doing the boost, giving the boost is at. It's kind of a tough angle to deal with, and that's why it's a pretty standard molly at this point. But Liquid, they're doing the 4-1 again, and this time Astralis is full stacked over on the A side when Liquid does the 4-1. I really feel like there must be some sort of read here. This cannot be this cannot be just coincidence. But anyways, Elige finds the kill. Then he's going to go aggressive here. He's got a little bit of support connected up with his team. And he's also got a good gun, so he feels fairly confident peeking that angle, trying to clear it for his team. And even though he dies, it might seem like he's a little bit disconnected, but the odds of Magisk getting away safely are just about 0. He would have to pull off some heroics with the Deeg in hand to find a multi-kill, which is pretty tough, and they play that well to deal with that. And now Astralis in the 3v4, they're not getting aggressive quickly. They know that Liquid is likely holding all of these angles. So a lot of the time you're in a 3v4 here, you're trying to quickly get aggressive on the flank, but you're going to notice that Astralis delays and then they start trying to get aggressive on the flank. And I think this is a pretty smart play to try and delay and then get aggressive because they know that Liquid has a tendency to enjoy to hold the angles for a little while, and that's exactly what Liquid did there. And once they start to get a little pressure, that's when they start to push up. I think it's still a little bit jumping the gun. They could have waited a tiny bit longer, but if Liquid was going back over to the B side, maybe the timing would have worked out correctly. And only one player gets punished for it. Now, again, they're just trying to get some economic damage done. If they could find a couple kills, they would be happy. But Liquid does close it out well this time around, so doing a little bit better of a job than they've done in the past, and ends up that Astralis will be going for the double op here. And I love this angle that Glaive, rather, is holding here. Fantastic angle to actually try and find and catch people off guard towards short, especially if they're not going to be mollying it. You get a lot of information for yourself. You get a lot of stuff done. And on the A side, that we're getting a little bit aggressive, but not all the way aggressive. And when that molly comes down, it's going to push Device back, but he wants to kind of one-way that molly, because if Elige peeks out, he's going to have a tough time actually spotting it out. But Dupree has to smoke himself off because he was dying to the molly. Unfortunate for Dupree. And the rotate should be coming out here for Astralis at some point. They should get a third player over here. But actually, the confidence in this play is just boosting up. Oh my lord. Dupree spraying through the smoke to try and draw some attention. maybe make someone spray back, maybe make someone move around in the smoke to give Device the ability to find the frag. But Dupree actually gets a kill through the smoke just randomly there, and it also draws a player over to worry about the smoke a little bit because he got the frag, and then Device finds the frag on that player as well. That's absolutely ridiculous. And now in the 5v3, they just have to play a little bit safe. They have to make sure that these players that are holding angles, these two players towards B, they're both in spots where they're almost guaranteed to get at least one kill. And if you're guaranteed to get at least one kill, you're in a 5v3, then you're in a pretty good spot. Zipnix is the only one that's really not in a spot where he's guaranteed to get a kill. He's playing an off angle on the site that is a little bit more stacked. However, Dupree is here to support, and that's the important part. Even if Zipnix had gone down there, Dupree would have been able to find a trade with at least one, likely both of them, and in that case, everything's fine still. So they're playing so well together, not really giving Liquid almost any openings whatsoever, and they're putting themselves in great spots to be able to win these rounds. So now, once again, Liquid, this time they're going a little bit more spread. They're going with 2 players towards the outside of B, 1 connector, and 2 towards A. And you can see Astralis has some idea that this is going on as well. They're playing very aggressive with alone here towards the B side, or the A side, and he's even going to go re-aggress after that molly. I think he's likely re-aggressing to get some information, thinking that Liquid might not actually be on this side of the map. But in any case, he's going to continue looking for something. Again, I want to highlight that he's not playing, fully safe. He could get caught off guard here. Someone could walk up on him, but in this type of situation, sometimes you have to allow that possibility to happen. You have to allow yourself to be in a situation where you could be caught off guard and just hope that you're not. You take the high percentage play. That's exactly what he's going to do. Then you're going to see Astralis with the double counter flash to draw and waste some time of Liquid as this execute comes in to allow Magisk to get the rotate off, and you've got Dupree holding over the smoke, one-waying it in a situation where you can grab a kill and fall back quickly with support from Zipnix as well. This is such great holds here from Astralis. I mean, even theoretically, these holds are fantastic, just the way they're playing them out. And it leaves Elige in a tough spot, 1v2. He finds the first one and the second. Elige, what was that? I mean, Astralis was in such a great spot. You could say that the first player there, I believe that was Device, got a little bit antsy. He probably didn't need to push up quite like that, but I think he was more worried that the player was going to be, or Elige that was going to be trying to isolate on the player in pit. And if he was isolating the player in pit, that player in pit is likely dead because I think he was already low HP. It makes it very tough. So he's trying to create space for his teammate, but in the process, he ends up getting taken down because of some awareness there from Elige. And it's just a great round there from Liquid, or from Elige specifically, to close that one out. So we've got the pistol round now coming out. Astralis on the T side this time around, and they've got 2 players with smokes and 2 flashes. And on the Liquid side, they have the Kit 2 flash. So this flash towards Monster is super common, and I think you're going to see it. Nitro is trying to some extent, he's trying to mask a strat that they often do with the triple peek towards Monster. He's throwing that flash so it seems like they're doing the same thing. Now, unfortunately, because he has to throw that flash, he can't buy a smoke, which is what you often might want, because again, if the bomb ever gets planted at A, you probably want to be able to smoke defuse. And even on the B side, being able to smoke off short and defuse, things like that are incredibly important, but most teams don't end up going for the smoke on these situations. Well, at least a lot of the time they don't. And in this case, I think Liquid is forced not to because they're trying to mask their strat, and they're playing heavily towards A. They're hoping that with that flash coming out, Astralis is kind of trying to counter strat it and head over to the B side. Even if they didn't know Liquid, that is a strat that a lot of teams do like to do. So they're trying to mask it a little bit. Unfortunately, Stewie gets taken down initially, and this is going to put a hole in a lot of their attempted hold here, and it does allow Astralis to realize that things are a little bit off, that this is potentially not the way Liquid would generally be playing if they were going for the triple peak. They might not be playing that aggressive, and it's going to adjust their play quite a bit. And so Magisk is waiting for this play towards top connector. He's able to find a kill for himself, and now they're in a 3v4, and Liquid can still win this, but it's such a tough spot to be in. They really do want to try and find a kill, or at least some information for themselves before any sort of execute will come out. But they're not going to be able to do it quite early enough. Except Elige does find the kill, brings it into the 3v3, but as you can see, when the bomb gets planted here towards A, without a smoke for the bomb, there's a lot of pressure to find the kills themselves, because it's so hard, especially with the lower numbers that you get. You can't deal with those players in bathrooms, and now Astralis is put into the 3v2, and there's no pressure for them to do really anything except play the bomb, and Dupree is kind of trapped in sight, but he still finds both kills for himself, so everything works out pretty well for him there, regardless. But Liquid was in a tough spot as soon as they got down 4v3 there, because as soon as the bomb's planted, they're having a very tough time to find the frags and find the win. And you can see the difference between the way Astralis and the way Liquid took Connector on round number 2. You'll see this, that Liquid's take on Connector was much more aim-based on round 2, I believe it might have been round 6 or 5, in which Glaive found the 4K and Connector, and they weren't using their utility nearly as much. They wanted to hold on to that utility for later for an execute. They wanted to hold on to that utility and take the gun battles in towards Connector. However, Astralis is playing it much more safely, and they're double mauling it instead. So they're making sure that nobody's in Connector so that Magisk can take it alone. And this is partially, of course, because Magisk is taking it alone, whereas Liquid had 2 players attempting to take it, so they felt like they could win the gun duels, which they just weren't able to do. And this is the 3-1. So this is a 4-1 still, but on the A side, it's a 3-1. And this is what I was talking about. Very often, teams like to go for a 4-1. This is what you're looking at. Sometimes it'll be 3 towards Playground, 1 towards Connector. Sometimes you have 2-2, and sometimes 1-3 or 3-1, you know, either way. So Liquid haven't given anything up yet. They haven't been playing overly aggressive because they know Astralis is pretty technical in the way they try and take towards Connector, and they don't want to give anything up. And it's the mid-round aggressions there that work out very often against Astralis, where you catch the players a little bit off guard with the play like Elige just did, creeping into the divider there and catching a player that was with his gun out, but catching him where he's not fully expecting the play. And then Astralis is going to be going for the execute, and this is a very tough execute to deal with when you only have pistols. I love that Astralis is going for this type of execute, because I feel like it's the type of execute, again, it's very tough to deal with when you have pistols, because as soon as the bomb gets planted, the retake is incredibly tough to actually manage with potentially no kit, and with potentially no smoke for the bomb. But Liquid just make the perfect play through the smoke, grab the frag, and then they find another one on the long range play to take down the second player towards short. So I kind of like the play there from Astralis, where they're not kind of worried about using a ton of utility for themselves to actually make sure that they get the bomb plant and they get site control. Things just don't work out perfectly for them after that. And if they had that 5th player alive that actually died towards bathrooms earlier on in the round, they might have had a much better situation, because they would have had a 3v4 on the retake. But because Elige found that entry and got away with it as well, you know, and you'll notice that if you remember back, Elige got that entry, and the second player didn't chase too hard because they didn't want to give up an extra gun. And that's just the safety that Astralis plays with that a lot of teams don't play with. I think a lot of teams would have tried to chase and get the refrag back because they knew that player was very lit. But you open yourself up when you try and chase in that situation to potentially losing a second player and putting yourself in a very unwinnable situation. So instead, Astralis let that 5v4 happen. But because they let the 5v4 happen and they couldn't get the trade back, and Liquid had a great play through a smoke, they were put into a tough spot, and Liquid just landed the shots. So now Liquid is the team with the advantage. They've got guns up here. Astralis would be, again, pretty happy if they could get the economic damage done and put Liquid on the back foot, potentially make sure that they don't have 5 players remaining. And so they've taken the short B control, which is obviously, in general, the easier place to take with pistols. Short B and Connector are places where you can force the close range angles. And now they want to try and force their way out. They know that Liquid is trying to aggressively hold towards jail there, and that's why they triple peek towards Twist, but Twist just lands the shot. So you can see they had an idea that Twist was in the angle that he was at. They knew he was likely going to be staying there and likely going to be fully committed, potentially jumping up on the jail to fully commit. However, they just aren't able to win the gun duels. And one of the things that I want to highlight is a lot of the times when teams know that they're going to be heading towards a bomb site a lot during a half, they can actually set themselves up to do that on the pistol round as well, where Astralis went fairly heavily towards the B side, and if they had found a couple kills, it would mean that likely the players on the B side have even lower utility heading into the first gun rounds, and it means that their attempt at a B hit will be even more likely to work. And this is something that people very rarely think of when it comes to strats, but I think is pretty important. Either you know you want to hit towards the bomb site because you know the team that you're playing is, you know, a little bit weak, or you know you have a really good B hit, or that's just how you play the map, whatever. So you try and start to put pressure on it on the force buy on second round, or on the eco on second round with the pistols, and you try and find kills on the players there, or you just happen to find kills under the players there, and you end up executing to that bomb site on the first gun round because you know the players there are likely to be low on money. And as soon as they knew that Twist had an M4 there, that's when they knew that they wanted to triple peek on him. They wanted to take the M4 down. If you had an SMG, they might have considered it a little bit differently to make sure to potentially try not to feed him too much bank, but I don't think that necessarily would have played out quite like that. But in any case, I think that's a play that's a little bit underrated, or just underappreciated, that they went towards B, tried to take some money out of the hands of the B players, and then they go, likely they know that they want to head back towards B later on because they know Liquid as a team. So now they're trying to get some utility out. You can see the way they tried to get the utility out there. They sent a player out and tried to have him spot out, try and spot the players out, try and get some information. They know that Liquid is likely to be a little bit low on utility because they're probably going for the freebie fourth round. This is what a lot of teams like to do. They go for that freebie, and because of the situation where they had 5 alive, they're likely going for the freebie, which means they're likely able to win some gun duels. And of course, Astralis doesn't have a ton of utility to work with either, so they need to go for the gun duels. But you'll notice that they were edging out with 2 players, and then once they got spotted and they realized that nobody was too pushed up, they backed up with both, and one backed all the way up, waiting for the re-aggress here and looking to draw out some utility as well. So they're looking for Liquid to try and get some information, but little do they know, Liquid doesn't really need to get information because they've got Stewie on the flank, and if Astralis realized that, things might play out differently. But as soon as they get that kill, they need to start forcing out. And there's a little bit of a delay here on the force out. They're not able to do it quite quickly enough because Twist finds the kill for himself. It creates a lot of space where Magisk can't start forcing in. Magisk, if his teammate was still alive, if Twist hadn't found the kill, likely would have been forcing in there and putting pressure, which would have allowed a little bit more time for Xyp9x and Device to push out while his team was putting pressure. But because they weren't able to do that, they end up into a situation where Liquid's actually rotating around. Device is going to be able to find the trade, and Nitro is just way out there. I actually just want to watch this one back to see what happened here from Nitro, why he's outside of heaven like that, because he's not in a situation where Elige can support him at all. Elige cannot make sure and guarantee that he can support Nitro in heaven there, which makes this one a little bit weird. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to rewind one round in the late portions of the half. I just want to see what exactly happens here. I think Nitro might have tried to push out to support his initial teammate, and his teammate died before he got out. Let's see. So yeah, his teammate's not dead yet. He's already committed out of heaven, and now he just doesn't want to fall back. He wants to hold on, but unfortunately, there's really no way for Elige to support him very well in that situation, and Nitro probably should have found the kill regardless, but Device just lands the shot. Nitro whiffs it a little bit, and that's unfortunate. I think if his teammate, if Naf had stayed alive a little bit, or if Naf had died faster, in fact, Nitro wouldn't have put himself in that spot, and they would have been able to play out the 2v1 a little bit better, but they instead put themselves in that spot, and they lose it, and that is a very unfortunate round for them to lose, because now their utility is terrible, and Astralis likely know that. They know that the utility, the money situation of Liquid is pretty bad, and they're going to try and execute on that by heading their way back over to B and using a very coordinated execute that they've got going for themselves to take over to B, recognizing that either they're going to have low guns and full utility, or more likely they're going to have low utility and good guns, especially on the B side where teams want to do that. A lot of the time you have to be able to win gunfights when you try and hold on the B side of the map. So they're going to be setting up this execute. 5 players on the B side, full execute coming out. I want to just look at this from a top-down perspective so you can see exactly how this one plays out. So Nade comes out towards barrels. The smoke comes down. They're trying to draw as much utility out right now as they can. Try and draw any flashes or smokes or nades. Make sure that there's not a stack of utility on the Liquid side, sitting still and just waiting. Liquid is doubling up on the far side of Monster. The execute will come out here in a moment, and the flashes are very good from them. Pull Naf out of spot, and look at that second flash. That's the flash that most teams don't really have in this situation, right? So the first flash came out for the double peek towards Monster here. They found the kills, and the next flash came out to catch Naf off guard. Again, that's the flash that a lot of teams won't have. They'll have that first flash, and they'll have the second flash maybe, but the second flash will be something that it's winged from a player in Monster, or it's like late, or it's not coordinated. But Astralis have that player dedicated, ready to throw that flash. They know that's the goal. They know, and they have confidence in the players that are coming out Monster that they don't need that extra player, and they want to just make sure the execute is strong there. And now Astralis going to make their way back over to B yet again, just putting continual pressure on the B side, making Liquid very worried about it, so that potentially you can see them hit back over to the A side, and especially you can see Liquid potentially worried and using early utility on the B side, and a lot of the time you can make your opponents antsy, or Astralis can make Liquid a little bit antsy to use those flashes and use that utility earlier off of less utility usage from Astralis to draw out that utility. That specifically is something that they can often get done in these types of plays by continually pressuring over to B. And you're going to notice the timing here. I feel like this might be another play from Astralis as well. I almost feel like there's some specific timing here, because you can hear, I think as soon as Liquid threw a flash, at the same instant Liquid threw that flash towards short, Astralis started executing out A, or executing out Monster. I kind of feel like that might be some sort of play in itself, like a sort of, either in that it's a play where they know that that flash towards short from any team likely signals that the aggression towards short is coming out, and hitting out Monster at the same moment is likely good, or maybe they see this as something about Liquid specifically, because I guarantee you Astralis has studied every second of Liquid gameplay in the last like 6 months, right? Going into this, because Astralis see Liquid as their only real competition at the major. They're the guys that they need to be taken down, and Astralis wants to do it, all partially for revenge, partially because they just want to do it. But you're going to see here what happens. The flash is going to come out here, right? Yeah, Naf's going to throw a flash, and at the same time, the flash comes out, so it's actually just like timing. It's not even intentional, it seems like. But they start executing out. Molly comes down, takes down, forces Nitro to smoke himself off, and they know that the aggression seems like they know the aggression from Liquid is coming towards short, so they're clearing that well, because they know that Nitro is not going to be able to support his teammate. And now you've got Nitro in an awkward spot, gets traded, but Twist, this is the spot that they don't seem to expect. The second player there, although he does get traded quickly, so it's just an incredibly, sorry, I just accidentally fast forwarded through all that. That's an incredibly crisp timing from Astralis. I want to watch this one from a top-down view just to show you one more time. Very crisp timing from Astralis with the nade usage and the flash usage as well. The fact that it comes off the back of Liquid throwing a flash towards short is also fantastic. This might just be, I mean, if that's just an in-game read where they think that Liquid, based off the fact that they lost, 5 rounds in a row at B, that they might be getting a little bit antsy to try and get aggressive towards the short side because they've been taken down at Monster. And if you're taken down heavily at Monster, you're starting to think to yourself that maybe you get aggressive towards short so that you can retake B from short after the B take comes out. I'm not sure if it's an in-game read. It's incredibly impressive. But in any case, so A molly did come out towards barrels early that forced the smoke out, which is why the re-molly is even more likely to not get smoked off, and they could catch that player off guard. Then Astralis is going to get pushed up here, get ready for it. Flash comes out, then the execute comes out right away, and highlight the fact that Liquid rotated a player with the smoke to barrels after the smoke was used on their initial player at barrels. Like, that's a very smart play from Liquid. There's nothing Liquid's doing that is specifically bad whatsoever. They're playing very good. It's just Astralis is also playing like next level good, right? So I love that they threw that flat, or they repositioned Nitro to be at barrels because he's still out of smoke for the eventual molly. Then look at this flash here. This is a flash that a lot of teams don't throw, even though it's absolutely fantastic. The only problem is it requires Xyp9x to be way back there, right? Back where Xyp9x is, to throw this flash that lands at the pillar here that blinds everyone but doesn't blind any Astralis player. So they have to have confidence in their teammates to be able to do that, but Astralis does have that confidence. That flash comes through, they're able to find a kill off the back of it, and also because that flash comes through, it pushes back Liquid. It pushes Nitro, and it pushes NAF a little bit back because they're blind, they're not able to support each other, they're not able to play together in the way they might want, and for that reason, they're actually able to split up all of the defense of Liquid, and as Xyp9x was behind, he's able to flank the players on short a little bit after. He comes around, flanks them, and catches them off guard in that situation, which is just fantastic. So now Liquid on pistols again, and Astralis again. Liquid gets some information towards middle that not a lot's going on there, but Astralis are making their way quickly over to B and trying to catch Liquid off guard. Again, they're trying to, it seems like they're in a coordinated effort trying to play very aggressive against pistols and try and use those rounds as rounds that force Liquid to be a little bit worried about the heavily aggressive plays and use utility early. Even on CT side, it seemed like they were playing fairly aggressive against pistols and a little bit more passive against the riflers. And on these anti-ecos, that's when they're playing very aggressive. They don't want to give Liquid time and space to find openings, to find entries. They're just going heavily towards one side and finding the entries for themselves and winning the gunfights with superior guns. And things are working out pretty well for them. So now they're in the next round, and this time they're finally headed over to A, and they're taking their sweet time of clearing out all these angles. Because they know that Liquid is likely to get a little bit aggressive when you've been losing B so often. You start to get aggressive towards A to get some information on the A side to realize whether or not they're going heavily towards B and maybe get a flank off or something. And Astralis was very careful in how quickly they were clearing all the angles. They were taking all the time in the world, and they were doing it very methodically, and that's why they found the double kill, or the two trades there. Onto Liquid. They found the entry and they caught them off guard a little bit, and now Astralis just groups up. Liquid is grouped up as well, because Liquid knows that if Astralis want to hit over to the A side, Liquid has a very good chance to win, but Astralis, unfortunately for Liquid, hit over to the B side, which I think is it's kind of mind games. I think Liquid probably thought to themselves, wow, they've hit B like 5 rounds in a row, they must be going over to A this round, excuse me. And in fact, Astralis went right on back to B. So they've gone B 6 rounds in a row. Although that was kind of a mid-round B situation. They were really headed over to A early, and then they go back over to B late round off of a call. Now, Liquid's getting aggressive on the A side, very aggressive. They're trying to get information here. They're trying to potentially go for the flank here. They're just waiting it out a little bit. And on the B side, Twist is trying to hold on. He's just trying to delay them and make it look like they're holding a lot of players there. And as soon as Device goes down, you expect Astralis to be hitting out very quickly here, but they're still a little bit worried. They're not seemingly prepared to throw the mollies down quite at this time. Seems like they're not ready for an execute to come out at this time. They missed a molly, I believe. I believe that was their molly that missed onto the ramp there. Then Magisk had to throw a molly on his own towards barrels. So it seems like they were just caught off on the timing here. This is something they did not expect, so they're not at all ready to throw the execute and have the execute come out right now. So they take a long time to do it because they're caught off guard here, which is very awkward because they've been so crisp on their executes, but it seems like maybe Liquid hasn't been putting enough pressure on them to force the execute out, which is, you know, forgivable because you're not usually in that situation where you have to force an execute to come out, but it seems like Astralis is not all that prepared to deal with this when the execute does come out. And there's the flash from, I would just like to highlight how far away that actually hit. You can see where it landed. It landed right up here, and it full blinded him. A little bit of a glitchy play there, I think, is all that was. But now he's going to try and lurk through the smoke, because you can kind of one-way that smoke, but it doesn't work, and Liquid's already fully rotated over. So the flashes are coming out pretty effectively here from Astralis. You can see the double flash that lands here. This is not blinding anyone from Astralis as they're back here. It's landing below, so it's giving them, again, a lot of space to work with, a lot of ability to kind of pick apart Liquid and make sure that they're not teaming up against Astralis. So these flashes are really well coordinated, and it's really part of why they're pushing Liquid so far back. Liquid's a team where they want to play a lot of the time pretty aggressive, and they want to take the gunfights pushed up, and they want to take those early gun duels, but Astralis is not letting that happen at all. These flashes are absolutely decimating Liquid. It's like they're just unable to deal with it. And again, there was a little bit of a delay there on that one that allowed the full rotate to come over, which is part of the, the situation that went wrong there. But this must be some researched play from Astralis. The reason they're hitting B so often against Liquid here, they have such good flashes, such good utility usage, but especially, again, the flashes that are pushing Liquid back into very awkward spots and making it incredibly hard for them to get almost anything done. And I feel like this is just specifically because Astralis knew that Liquid were going to be picking this map against them. Astralis likely knew that Liquid would pick their best map. Like Liquid would pick Overpass into Astralis. This is what would happen, and so they had this whole situation planned out. And look at how this utility is being used. It almost gave space for Glaive to push all the way up and full swing on the player in pit there. But he just didn't quite get it. I think Liquid threw one flash that pushed Glaive back, but just the coordination here is absolutely incredible. And putting Astralis now 14-12 up, looking to close this one out. Liquid pull off their last pause, but now they're going for the force. They're full into this one, and it's such a tough spot. They haven't been able to find almost anything. They haven't been able to get really almost anything done whatsoever. And this B take is just absolutely destroying them. And finally, Astralis gives some reprieve on the B side. Liquid will be able to get control of short B. They should have some idea that A is the place it's being hit towards. And they're able to get the trade on to Zipnix, which is big. And now Naf is in bathrooms with the op in hand. He was able to find the first one. He can't reposition really. He's like totally trapped here, but he's still able to find another kill for himself. This is the type of play that you expect more out of Liquid. Astralis is doing a pretty good job of trying to force the trades, but Liquid, in this one, Naf was still able to find a 2K for himself just off the back of some good aim, some good positioning, and a little bit of pressure given by his teammates from Connector, giving some space for him with aggression from coming out of Team Liquid. This is more what you would have expected out of this game, but this is not really the way the game's been working. And this time around, Nitro tries to get aggressive towards Connector, but Magisk is there and beats him with the Krieg. Wins the gun duel. And Stewie pressuring towards short. He gets spotted out there. It gives a lot of information here to Dupree as well. It gives him a lot of information on the way things are going to know that an op, first of all, that was a double op setup. One of the ops is towards B. He was getting aggressive towards short, trying to get some information. And likely that is why they make their way back over. They know the op is posted up in the B side, and their flashes are so effective that they feel like they probably can make that op almost completely impotent with this execute coming out. So here comes the nades. The molly is coming out at the perfect time from Twist, and that really gives them a lot of space. And you'll notice the one thing that they didn't do is they didn't smoke off the molly. He tried to play in front of it to try and catch Astralis off guard in that position when they're still making their way out of Monster. Timing this time around, that's not exactly what goes on. And now Stewie going to be trapped behind the pillar. The flashes actually don't hit him this time around, but you'll notice the re-execute here from Astralis, and I absolutely love this as well. They go for the fake execute, and then they re-execute in again and put themselves in a great spot because Liquid already used all their utility, because Astralis has been going off the first execute fairly often here in this half. They haven't really been re-executing very often so far, and so going for a partial execute, bailing on the execute, not actually going for it, and then re-executing in, Liquid has no utility to deal with it whatsoever. They've also already lost a player, I believe, based off utility usage with the nade thrown down on a twist there. It's just beautiful. So let's just fast forward through this one. Nitro gets taken down early with the aggression. There's still 3 players over to the B side. Astralis want to make their way back. So, you can see the molly comes out. They want to pressure out. I'm not sure they want to go for the full execute or not here, if that was the plan, but the molly comes down and they fully abort. They have the confidence in this one. They fully abort. They make their way back, and they're going to go for the re-execute, right? So you can see the way the re-execute will come out in a minute, even with Stewie getting the kill. The nade takes him down. Just, oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful. They know that... I think they're thinking to themselves that Stewie had taken some return damage from Device or from someone else when he had went for that frag. Maybe they thought he got legs, so they throw that nade out. They actually kill Twists, which probably is not what they were expecting, but it works out. And now look, Liquid has 0 utility, right? They don't have they have 1 flash on Elige, who's not even a B player, and the re-execute's going to come out, and Naf is going to be at barrels. He's going to get mollied off here, the molly towards the ramp as well. Just absolutely destroyed. Now 15-13, Liquid in absolute desperation mode, and finally finds something. That was a boost from Elige to get the player into the short tunnel, which is something that they maybe could have done a little bit earlier, because that's a play that would have worked out for them just about all half so far. But, you know, it's such a weird play to even do. And now Naf, look at the confidence here from Magisk. He knows that his team is going to be able to deal with Naf. He's just making sure that they're not getting shot at from long here. Unfortunately, he seems to turn at just the wrong moment to finally... That's the moment he thinks that the player towards long would have peaked out, but the Elige towards long was a little bit later than he expected. However, Device is still there to get the refrag. As soon as he knows that player's looking that direction, he's over back there, gets the refrag for himself, gets them the trade-off, and now they're in the 3v3. This is just about an unwinnable situation. As soon as the players get out of the bomb site, this one seems like it's over, and a little bit of a misplay here from Nitro, to be honest. If he had walked through bathrooms, things might have worked a little bit better. If he had not flashed himself, things might have worked a little bit better. But here, Liquid... the thing is, Stewie knows that if they just straight push up and try and kill the players in bathrooms, that could end up backfiring, because if Device, for example, rather than aggressing, if he just goes back down into connector when both players start pushing up down this line in bathrooms, then Liquid almost automatically lose. Or like, I mean, if Glaive and Device both backed up as soon as they saw both players pushing, or if they found one kill and one of them backed up, that's why Stewie wants to go back and tap the bomb here. He wants to try and make sure that they're forced to stay close bathrooms, stay within a line of sight, because if they get too pushed up, they're not going to be able to back up and get the bomb defuse off, right? But in doing so, they're not able to push up deep enough to actually get the kills with an MP9 and a CZ. So they're kind of between a rock and a hard place there. It's a lose-lose situation. They lose the game, and that was beautiful there from Astralis, especially in the B executes. Those were perfectly timed, crisp, clean lock, boys. Anyways, if you want to see more of this type of content, hit up the Patreon or continue following the YouTube channel. And I'll post one of these once in a while. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.